if you've been following this YouTube channel for the better part of the past 4 years, you might remember this video that we made back during the 2021 Stanley Cup Playoffs. It was a really great time to be a Montreal Canadiens fan making YouTube videos about the Montreal Canadiens and that season, because the Habs went to the Stanley Cup Final and we were doing live streams for all the games, and this is back when I had a lot more time in my hands, so we were able to get that done. But ultimately, this video is one that I think stood out among the rest. We had spoken about the crazy similarities between the 1993 and 2021 Montreal Canadiens Stanley Cup playoff runs. Never mind the Patrick Roy and Carey Price both winking at the opponent's picture. That's admittedly probably intentional on Carey Price's behalf, but all the other stuff that we had talked about in that video up until that point, heading into the third round, there were a lot more similarities than not that we did acknowledge from the 93 run and the 21 run. However, 4 years later, it's now April 2025, and we're making a similar video in a similar way because now we have some very legitimate comparisons to make here. Now, it's on a smaller scale, I will say that. Last time we made this video, the Canadiens had gone a full 3 rounds in the playoffs, and they were heading into, I think it was, Game 4 or Game 5 against Vegas, and it was a really big deal, and then they made the finals, and then they lost in 5 games, so it was a, much further along playoff run than what the Canadiens are at right now, but there was a post made on the Habs subreddit that I did think was hella interesting, and it was posted almost immediately after the Canadiens lost Game 2 against the Washington Capitals. No Scrub Phils fan says, some of y'all haven't been around, and it shows. Included is an image post of one 1993 NHL Adams Division semi-finals matchup, aka the first round of the playoffs. In the first round in 1993, the Montreal Canadiens defeated the Quebec Nordiques 4-2 in 6 games. However, the interesting part about this series was Game 1 was decided by Quebec 3-2 in overtime, and Game 2 was decided by Quebec 4-1 in regulation. Now, the scores are not exactly the same here, but if you look at the specific games that went down, okay, what happened here? In Game 1, Montreal versus Quebec, April 18th, 1993. Gilbert Dion and Brian Bellows each scored in the first and second periods to give the Canadiens the 2-0 lead, but then Martin Rushinsky and Joe Sakic scored in the third in the last minute and a half to tie the game up and to bring it to OT. Scott Young then scored in the overtime to give Quebec the 3-2 lead in the game and the 1-0 series lead too. Montreal had a 2-0 lead, they blew it, and they lost in overtime. In 2025, the other team, Washington, had the 2-0 lead. Montreal came back, it was in overtime, but then Washington ultimately won. Again, not exactly the same, but still a 3-2 overtime loss. Okay, what happened in game number 2 in 1993? Well, in Game 2, 1993, the Quebec Nordiques had a 3-0 lead, and then Brian Bellows scored to make it 3-1, and then eventually Claude Lapointe got the goal at the end of the game to make it 4-1. Again, not really the same, but still a regulation loss in a night where the Canadiens only scored 1 goal. What happened in this 1993 first-round series, and what happened in the rest of that playoff run? Well, the Habs ended up beating Quebec in overtime 2 more times after that, and they also beat Quebec 2 times in regulation. The Montreal Canadiens came back from being down 2-0 in the series to winning 4-2 against the Quebec Nordiques. And then the Habs swept the Buffalo Sabres. They beat the Islanders 4-1, and they beat the LA Kings 4-1 too. Montreal What did I remind you? They were a really good team in the 92-93 season. They just kind of faltered towards the end. Patty Waugh just did not really have it in him towards the end of the 92-93 season, and that's kind of why the seeding got messed up for Montreal. But that team was able to come back from being down 2-0 in the opening series, losing in overtime in Game 1, losing in regulation Game 2, and only scoring 1 goal. I'm not saying it's guaranteed to happening in 2025 again. This version of the Canadiens is definitely not as good as the Habs squad that won the 1993 Stanley Cup. But if you're a Habs fan who is old enough to remember what happened in 1993, I personally wasn't even born yet. I was 7 years removed from being born in 1993. You probably have felt this before. And that's ultimately the point that I wanted to make in this video. I've been saying it all week, man. Don't feel pissed off or upset that the Canadiens are not playing well or that they're not converting on their chances or that they're losing games. I mean, okay, it's valid to feel upset, but folks that are getting all angry about it, just try not to get angry. Being angry just kind of hurts your own morale, and it takes away years of your own life if you're of a certain blood pressure type. But also, this is bonus hockey for the Canadiens. They were not supposed to be here. They were the worst team in the NHL to qualify for the Stanley Cup Playoffs in 2025. And they honestly did have a pretty good opportunity to do some damage throughout this series. They lost Game 1 in overtime. That could have gone anybody's way. They lost Game 2 because the referees did not execute a proper call, and they fumbled some chances down low and in tight. Alex Newhook, if he scores that 1T, then boom. Different game. If Logan Thompson doesn't make that huge toe save, boom. It's an entirely different game, an entirely different series. Folks, the sky is not falling. And even if the Habs lose Game 3, they lose Game 4, they get swept, the sky is still up there. It's not cloudy with a chance of meatballs. It's cloudy with regular old clouds, or maybe not even clouds, because it's almost summer and it's actually getting kind of warm outside. So go outside, smell the roses, folks. The Habs were not even supposed to be here. But if you were looking for some comfort or some solace in the way the first 2 games ended up going for Montreal in 2025's Stanley Cup playoff run, then look no further than the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. Yeah, the Habs' first-round series against Quebec started the exact same way. In fact, there are a bunch of things that you could go out there and talk about in regards to the Habs making comebacks and doing all these crazy things. The 2021 run was a prime example of that. They were down 3-1 to the Leafs in the first round, and then they came back and they won. They embarrassed Toronto. They had turnovers over turnovers, and then they sprayed Kotkaniemi, and all these other guys started scoring some really clutch goals, and they beat the Leafs in 7 after having a 3-1 deficit. That's crazy. Not to say that this is the same team. In fact, you could even say that this team has a brighter future than that team that was beating Toronto and losing to Tampa Bay in the finals 4 years ago. The Montreal Canadiens are on a good path here, folks. They did a full-on rebuild in that time that they made the finals up until now. Bonus hockey, baby. But ultimately, this is an interesting statistical similarity to bring up, which is why I wanted to make this video. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Montreal Canadiens' first 2 games in the Stanley Cup Playoffs in 2025 and how eerily similar the results are to what happened in 1993. Do you believe in karma? Do you think this is a sign from the hockey gods? Why or why not? Is it just a crazy coincidence? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.